Here in this video, we're going to take a look at the project info and options. This is important information whenever starting a new project or setting some of the defaults within ElectricalOM. In order to access this menu, we're going to go to the edit icon here and down to project info and options. Upon selecting it, a new information box will appear. Here we have a number of tabs which relate to various properties and information on how things are being detailed within ElectricalOM. Starting on this first tab, Project Info, we can see that we can assign the project title, the client information and the date of which this project was started. We can also give it a unique project number. With each new project you start, these boxes will remain empty. You will then fill them out for each new project. Below this, we have the designer office info. This will be the information about your business, or as the designer, your information in relation to the project. As standard within the software, this will be defaulted as empty. However, by going to the next tab, User Default Information, you can predefine the default details which will appear in this area. Under this section as well, for the designer office info, you can save additional versions of your logo and firm information. This can be accessed by pressing the load save item here. You will then be able to store additional records which then can be loaded when required. At the bottom of the screen we have project revisions. Again, for each individual project, you can add various information about revisions you've been making as you go. Here, if I select the page icon with the green plus arrow on it, a new line will be added and I can add additional information about the project that I've been working on. To remove any particular line, where necessary, I can use the page icon with the red cross in it. Moving to the Calculation and Checks tab, we can identify specific properties about how our calculation data is working within ElectricalOM. These are defaults, and once we set these, any projects that we have open or will open within ElectricalOM will behave based upon the options that we have selected here. At the top, first we have ring socket outlet circuits. We can tell ElectricalOM to behave in certain manners while identifying the use of ring socket outlets. Here, our first option allows us to identify that the minimum conductor size must be 2.5 or 1.5 mm when using mineral insulated. Below that, we can also identify whether or not the protected device must have a minimum rating value of 30 or 32 amps. We can identify and check for fuse overload protection. Here with this option, we can consider the tabulated information within BS7671 rather than referring to the specific curve data that we have within the software. Defining the final circuit rating based upon the protected device rating, this will be in place of the design current. Other defaults that we then have the ability to identify is ensuring that RCD devices are only used for additional protection in TN systems by default, the ability to calculate 90-degree cables at 70 degrees, identifying the use of low smoke and fume cables as the default, and also changing the maximum permitted conductor temp for any of the designs. The next tab in this area is all related to selectivity. The first option available is to select between the backup protection from the supplier and the main protected device. This will allow you to use the software to identify upstream devices as backup protection where required. The next item will affect the warning system within the software. Within ElectricalOM selectivity study, manufacturer's data has been provided for particular ranges where the manufacturer has provided selectivity tables. Where there are no selectivity tables for particular types of devices from manufacturers, this will be flagged as a warning within the software. The next item is in relation to electronic adjustable devices. Within ElectricalOM, where electronic devices have been provided, we can simulate both the minimum and maximum curve band where required. Otherwise, for electronic devices, these will just show as a single line curve within the selectivity study. The next item is related to earth fault selectivity. This is generally provided for where RCD devices are being used within our system. However, within the software, if you are required to do specific checks around this, where no RCD device is in place, then these checks can also be performed by selecting this item. Finally, in this section, we have our let-through energy selectivity checks. We can include selectivity checks based upon the let-through curves between circuit breakers. We can do this in one of two ways, either considering the minimum fault level at the point of our circuit, or based upon the maximum level identified at the supply end of our circuit. The final tab in this section is around fault levels. Here we can specify what the C minimum and C maximum is going to be in terms of calculating our fault levels. The values that we select here will be applied to our source. Finally, we can set the enable current limiting effects of our devices as default. This option is here as a number of devices that are provided by manufacturers will have a current limiting effect provided by the device. This is otherwise in some cases known as cascading. Moving to our design defaults, here we can affect some of the information and the way information is being shown on our schematic detail. First, here we have our plan prefixes. As standard default, ElectricalOM will show our plan prefixes as L1, L2, L3. You can manually override this information by selecting any particular box and putting any 2-character combination here. If you change any of these character combinations, you can change these back to the defaults by pressing the predefined icon here. The refresh symbol, which is next to the predefined icon, will allow you to change the prefixes for any project that you have open and then replace the current prefixes that may be in place there. The next item is about the main supply orientation. This is only related to at the start of any new project. Changing this during an open or currently worked in project will not change the direction of the supply orientation. This will be shown in later videos and can be done directly on the schematic by rotating any particular object. Here, when we have a particular supply orientation selected, this will dictate where the first supply will be and in what direction your network will be built in your schematic. Currently, this is set as up. This behavior will then be replaced in the software by my supply starting at the top of my page with my network moving down as I build my design. The next option being down will allow my supply to start at the bottom of the screen and my network building upwards. Both left and right options are also available with the same sort of configuration settings. Here we can set the phase color scheme. As default, the software will identify with current harmonized methods being black, brown and grey. Red, yellow, blue is also available. This is mainly due to the fact where some countries may still require the use of red, yellow, blue. This is also useful if you are modelling an existing installation. The predefined cable display scheme will affect the information showing on cables within the schematic view. Here I currently have makeup and cable ID showing. Here, by selecting the information icon, we can see what information we're referring to as the makeup and cable ID. Cable IDs within ElectricalOM are unique to each individual cable that is placed into the system. This is particularly useful later on when we create circuit charts. By selecting this drop-down menu, we can choose which information will appear on our schematic. For instance, we can show just the makeup of the cable system or just the cable ID if we wish to do so. The next option is the circuit prefix and description in separate lines. This changes the behaviour of how details are displayed within our schematic view. For instance, here I have a switchboard in place. I can see that I have this option selected, so my circuit prefix, being the SB1, appears at the top. Because our description is now on separate lines, the description of our switchboard, being section 1, appears below it. When this is selected off and I refresh, we will see that the label in our schematic will change, here in this example I have used a switchboard, but this will also apply to final circuits. The last tab here is the program defaults. Here in program defaults, our first option is the autosave feature. ElectricalOM will automatically save your project in the background. In order to recover any autosaves or backups that have been made, we need to select this box with the 3 dots here. This will open up the file path location where any saves have then been made. Autosaves are always made locally on the machine in which the project has been worked upon. ElectricalOM also comes in 3 languages. As default, here in the UK, the language is set to English. Where necessary though, Greek and Turkish is also available. Our next item here is to prompt to deactivate the license on exit. ElectricalOM licenses are all concurrent licenses. This means that if you have a license for ElectricalOM, you can install the software on as many desktop computers as you wish. However, your license will only be able to be active on one machine at a time. If you are working with a number of individuals all using the same license, it is recommended that you have this option active. If leaving the software, this option will then always become available. Once deactivated, the license can then be used on another machine. Upon reopening the software, by pressing OK, the software is now going to take me through the activation system. Here, we must always activate through the internet. As I have already had a license serial number used on this particular machine, it will always be saved in the background. In order to activate, it must be ensured that the license has been deactivated on any other machines. I can then press the activate button here and it will let me back into the software. Our next item here is to auto-apply changes to the circuit editor. This changed some of the behaviour in the software when we make changes to any particular aspect. For instance, in this current configuration, if I go into the circuit editor of any particular circuit, I can make any changes such as the type of cable. When trying to leave the circuit edit menu, the software will ask me if I wish to save the changes that I have made. With this option active, however, any particular circuit that I may enter and make any changes to will automatically then be applied without me needing to save. Now leaving the circuit edit menu, we can see that that information has now been applied automatically. Finally, the last item here is the information about the regulations we're referring to within ElectricalOM. Currently, ElectricalOM has legacy calculation information relating back to the 16th edition. As default, the software will automatically load the latest edition that is available within the data.